All right, Coach. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the Simple Coach to Coach season preview. So very excited to catch up again after what we
Yep.
spoke. I don't know, like 4 months ago, 5 months. I can't even remember.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
yeah, but you're officially not a rookie anymore. So
Mhm.
just want to talk a little bit about the upcoming season. But I do appreciate you taking the time to hop on. So,
Mhm. Thanks for
um,
having me.
all right. So without much prompting, could you just give me a sense as to where your head is at regarding the season, who you have coming in, what your thoughts are about how you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, with this being kind of like our mine and my assistants, first kind of official recruiting class here, it's definitely going to be interesting to see that first transition of, hey, we're seeing them in the club level, high school level, and now they're on the field for us, in our conference, competing in that tough environment and stuff like that. So I think it'll be interesting for us and still figuring things out, and it'll be still a little bit of a learning curve, I'm sure, a little bit. But the class that we have coming in, we are very excited about. I know we were kind of late to the game in a sense because of when we got hired, but I think, honestly, all seven players that we have coming in, six freshmen, one transfer, um, I think they're not only going to contribute to our culture, which for us is sometimes the most important thing, but I definitely predict, we're going to see several of them breaking into the lineups early. I think a lot of them have a lot of upside, and we are very excited about them. And, we kind of have a diverse group of, like two wingers or forwards, some center backs, center mid, stuff like that, goalkeepers. So we have two coming in there too. So it'll be a nice, diverse group, and I think a lot of potential. And us going into season, we still have a couple injuries that are unfortunately are maybe not healed at the moment or still working on that. So that leaves us in a little bit of a gray area just to see, but it also provides, people that maybe, weren't in that role last year, whether it's a newcomer or not, to step up. And I think that's what's exciting about the college game every year is you kind of never know like who's going to come in and surprise you a little bit in some ways. So we're excited about that. I know when we last spoke, we kind of said we left off on a positive note. I think from like where we were, which we're definitely still excited about. And I think we announced our captains like before the summer, and I think all three of them are going to represent our program well and have already done that, and to help just give us that foundation heading into preseason that we kind of need and every program needs.
I'm just curious, sort of, is there a game, I'll just say, in the non conference
Mm-hmm.
that you're kind of have circled around? Like, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say it's like a super big test because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, you have a pretty daunting
Yeah.
pre-conference schedule. I mean, hey, let's play Christopher Newport in Ohio Northern over a weekend, see how much fun that is. But is there
Yep.
one where you're just sort of like, I am looking, I am looking at my team. This game will tell me a lot about where we're at. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, I mean, that weekend you just talked about, the Christopher Newport, Ohio Northern. For us, we wanted to kind of test ourselves a little bit more this year. It was hard at times to find, honestly, people to play. That was definitely part of it. But I do think the Calvin game is also going to be one that's going to be a really good test. Just because obviously we see every year that they play, typically U Chicago and played them in the tournament last
Yeah.
year. So I think that could give us like heading into like our conference play and stuff, that could give us maybe a little bit better of a measure of where we're at, I think, for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, the Christopher Newport game's definitely a little bit earlier on the season. So things can be interesting there. But the Calvin game's a little bit later, and definitely somebody that typically matches up against some of our conference opponents too, and obviously has made a good run last year as well. So
You don't start your conference play. I mean, you go to you host Rochester and
yep.
you in the first weekend of October.
Hmm.
Can I just ask the dumb question of the day? like through that month of September, right? I mean, you're facing some, uh, yeah, like I said, like Christopher Newport, Ohio Northern, John Carroll, um, Calvin.
Yep.
You're playing some good teams, good solid teams. How much tweaking do you do during that period of time, or do you go through the calendar and say, like, look, we're going to do whatever we need to do for preseason, right? We're going to try to solidify how we're going to play and the things we're going to do with our scrimmages, and then we're off. But do you do a lot of messing around in the month of September?
Um, I guess that partially will depend on how we're doing, right? Are we finding
Mm-hmm.
success with our, tendencies, the things that we're teaching, or aren't we, right? And I think that's a huge factor in it. I probably like it probably shifts from coach to coach. I'm sure there's coaches that like there are some coaches that I know game in game out like they're going to play one style of play and that's how they're going to play kind of no matter what because that's who
Mm-hmm.
they are or what they believe in.
Yeah.
I definitely believe in being a little bit more adaptive to what your team is giving you, what the game is giving you, things like that. So we're kind of maybe always making minor adjustments before whoever we're playing and stuff like that. Um, and I think that's a big part of just like kind of what we believe in a little bit is being adaptive, like being able to read the game, being able to problem solve hopefully within what we're doing. So I definitely think, I guess it'll depend a little bit though on how we're doing, right? Are we finding success? Have we had like last year we had a couple main injuries like after the first couple weeks, so we were doing a lot of tweaking midway
Mm-hmm.
through the season, and I'm sure like if you were to look at like our results or maybe how we were playing, like that was kind of reflective in how we played because we were moving people around. We were trying to fit in pieces of the puzzle and some were
Yeah.
fitting and some were not, So
Yeah.
I definitely anticipate like it's year two and, we're changing things still. I definitely anticipate having to make some changes and wiggle
Yeah.
things around a little bit. But I think if we can get the team understanding that that is just going to be a part of our process and that's going to be a part of like where we need to go and how we're going to get there, then I think that'll help things a lot and help like some people are resistant to change, but we have to let them know like it's probably going to come at some point. We just have to be ready for it and be adaptive and like kind of coachable when those moments come.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you? It sounds like you. I don't want to say you don't have a set 11, but like you're.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like your set 11 is what is decided at game time, and that you're open to. You have 30 players on the roster. You're open to having everybody at some point being in a position where they're relied on to start. Is that accurate or?
Yeah, I would say for sure, like within reason, right? We try to be very transparent as a staff as to where all of our players are. And I think, honestly, like our team really responds to that because, I mean, one of the reasons I went into coaching is because I felt like I didn't have that transparency and I was hoping to give that back to players that, in this sport and give back to the sport. So, I know that that can be very frustrating as an athlete to not have transparency in those senses. So we do. But I think we try to really, let them know that like if you're able to make these changes or you're maybe able to make these adjustments or if you just stay ready, like you might not be in the lineup to start, but there can be a time when you like it's your opportunity and you seize the day because
Yeah.
that's inevitable, I think, within a season that you're going to have somebody go down with an injury one day, or you're going to have somebody that's having an off week or two. And if that happens, like we need to find like kind of the next man or the next woman up kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
we try to have that because I also think like, we, with a lot of conversations with our athletes, I think in the past, like they felt very much like, you know, that there was a lineup and this was the lineup and this is what it was going to be day in day out, and I think that can be very discouraging to athletes. I mean, obviously we're competing at a high level. Like I think people have to come in knowing like they're not going to be gifted minutes, and I'm not saying that they think that, but I do think that creating an environment where people understand that there is going to be an opportunity if they do the things that we kind of have discussed is really important. And I think it's going to make us and has made us more competitive and has, like I think that's something that if we continue to do, like we're going to reap the benefits of, maybe not initially, but in years to come. And that's going to help with our culture and our foundation and make us a better team in the future. It's hard to do that right away when you're making changes. I think like we again faced that last year. That's the reality of the situation. But yeah, I mean, like we say that all the time. Like there could be a game, like we don't want our players to freak out. Like say one game they're not seeing the minutes that they're used to. That's going to happen. We don't want you to freak out right away. But if it now becomes 2, 3 games, like come talk to us. Let's talk about what it is, what the changes are, like what we're noticing. And we tell them like we watch and practice. Like there have been times this last season where we've had a player or two that has absolutely like raised their level in the last 2 weeks. And so when we're now in this game and we're looking, okay, like maybe they haven't cracked into the starting lineup yet, but we're looking down the bench and saying who's going to be able to make an impact. Well, so-and-so's been killing it at practice these last 2 weeks and doing everything we asked for them. So let's give them this opportunity to see what they do with it. And so I think our team has seen that, like we're willing to do that. And I do think that that helps foster a better environment where people don't feel stuck, like there's zero hope for me. And I do think like, some programs probably have that and maybe that functions for some, but I just don't think that's like what we're looking to create here.
I would also think just by doing that, you raise the level of competitiveness
Hmm.
day in and day out
Yep.
during practice. No, like
Yep.
with
And that's the
yeah,
goal too, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, obviously you play the sport first and foremost because it's fun, but I think competing is very fun. And I think a lot of our athletes, like they're at a school like Case because competing is fun and they want to do that
yeah.
and they want to do it on the national scale. So I do think we've seen that. And I think at first it was maybe a little bit of a shock to some of them, like, hey, no, come talk to us. Like we have an open door. Like this is how we are. But it takes them a second or two of almost seeing it happen to somebody else and then being like, oh, like they actually kind of are meaning what they say. And this is, making me feel more like I have an opportunity. So, yeah.
Uh, can I ask you the total political question? I don't know if this is your first year or second year. I think it's your
Hmm.
first year. This is
I mean,
totally like
going
you're
into,
so gonna get in trouble if you don't answer the proper way. Like, what are your thoughts on the flow sports?
yeah.
Sorry.
No,
So,
so my biggest thing is, I mean, most sports are heading to it, right? So I
mhm,
understand it. I do think there's my biggest thing with Division 3 and stuff, and like is the visibility factor. I think
mhm,
my husband coaches men's basketball, and we've been watching the TBT tournament right now, and
yeah,
we our D3 is killing it, and I
yeah, yeah,
absolutely love that because it is showing the world what Division 3 has. Because I think there is this natural like kind of like stigma or stereotype that like it is Division 1, 2, and 3, and it's that level, and there's not much like interchange
mhm,
there. When in fact, like that's not the reality at all. Yes, like there could be general like differences, but if you're looking at the top 25, top 50 in Division 3, like they can beat a lot
they
of
can
Division
compete.
Two, a lot of
Yeah,
Division 1 schools. Obviously Power 4 is always going to be different, and it
yeah,
should be. But I think you see that, and I do think with some of the changing now too, with some of the roster limits, you're going to see trickle down effect. I know there's several schools in our conference that have gotten players that were committed or were at Power 4 schools that maybe
mhm,
had their spot shifted. And that's the only thing that I would say about that. I'd be interested to see if like almost most people move to flow sports. So in reality, that visibility factor doesn't change because everyone's then going to have an account. And I do think if you have the vast majority that maybe do, that could help. But I guess like we're kind of early in it. And I do think like obviously there's a way that we can benefit from it for sure, probably financially, probably like the quality of like what our film
mhm,
is going to be. But that would be my only kind of, I guess, hesitation is I think the more you can make Division 3, Division 2, what like other divisions visible, it's going to allow the world to be more open-minded, understand that there's a lot of different levels out here that can compete, and it's not necessarily about like what division you are, it's just what school you're at.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I think that's my biggest thing, is that I just want Division 3 to be visible and have those opportunities.
Yeah. Maybe I should create a Flow Sports just for Division 3 soccer. Pay gobs of money for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Um, yeah, I'm just. I don't think so. All the talk of everything going on, NIL, all the politics of the Division 1, sort of how they're divvying that up, and all of those things. I I think I don't want to say backbench is the right word, but maybe it is. Like Division 3 isn't directly impacted necessarily by some of this. Like it ends up being like, what's the trickle down of it all? Roster limits, all that kind of thing. I think that sort of flows down. But I do think one of the real issues is just sort of like the financial viability of schools and athletic programs, and how do you fund. And I think this just becomes the next wave of, this is how we're going to help sort of fund what we're going to
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do. I just think that's the reality of where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky. I got access, so I have a pass, so I get to watch. But I'm really cognizant of the fact that it's another cost for people. But whatever. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Totally not a question. Love the new blue shirt,
Thank you.
golf shirt you're wearing. Fantastic, extra large. That's all I'll say. Um, what going into conference, we talked a little bit about this, but now that the rubber is about to hit the road, sort of, what is your sense about the UAA? Where are you thinking you are? Who do you think is the top dog that you need to come head to head with and
Yeah,
take
I
on?
mean, I think if I didn't say Wash U, people would be looking at me like, does she know what she's talking about? So, obviously, like, right, like Wash U, like they just won it all. I mean, we've all seen programs that obviously go on to win it all, and then like a Cal Lutheran, right? And then they're kind
Yeah,
of just making their way into the tournament. Like that happens in every sport every year. It happens in the pros, but with what I know, like they're gonna be just fine next year, I think.
yeah.
So obviously they're gonna be, I would say, the hardest competition, and they have the experience now. They know what it takes. But
Hmm.
you have Emory that made a deep run. You have basically every other team in our conference that has some sort of NCAA tournament success recently. So
Hmm.
that just makes it challenging, but it also makes it really fun. I mean, I talk
Yeah,
about it all the time. Like, I do think that like recruiting is one of the most important things, because if you can't bring the players in, then X's and O's aren't going to matter to a point. But I do think you see the X's and O's come into play a lot more within our conference than probably a lot of other conferences, just because of how the landscape is and who's in it. And I think that is a really fun dynamic, and something that like every year, you're going to see a little bit of every formation, a little bit of every style of play. You're going to have teams that high press you, teams that don't. You're going to have teams that play a 3-5-2, some that play a 4-4-2 diamond. And I think that's awesome, because obviously if we're doing well, that's going to prepare us for the tournament, and it's going to prepare us for the level, which is what we want and where we want to stay at as a conference. But yeah, I mean, obviously WashU is going to be at the forefront of everybody's minds and stuff like that. But I mean, any given day, I think any team can upset another team in this conference, and it makes it fun. It makes it a little bit nerve wracking sometimes, but um, it's more like football, in the sense of, they always say like every game matters in football. Like you can't
yeah,
just, there's not playoffs usually in the regular season and stuff
yeah,
like that the same way, right?
yeah.
As other sports. And so it's kind of that same dynamic. Like you got to show up every day, and the team that's going to be the most consistent and be able to be the most efficient in those games is going to be the one that's the top dog.
My understanding is that WashU is basically reloaded.
Yeah.
Like
I'm sure
as
they are. From yeah.
like you said,
Yep.
they're gonna be just fine. I think, and I was thinking about this earlier today. I'm doing some other. I'm trying to come up with a preseason top 25,
Mm-hmm.
basically, of the teams and the little bit I can glean from their recruiting and sort of who they're losing. Like where would I put them to peg them to be at the end of the season,
Oh,
right? And so
yeah,
and
yeah.
I was I yeah not a lot harder than I thought it would be, but anyhow. Um, the I was thinking about Wash U, and I'm like, what the hardest thing in any sport is to repeat where they
Hmm.
did last year. It's the hardest thing to do to repeat, and because they have a target now, national champions, they have a target on their back,
Hmm.
and I think that is the only thing that gives me pause because it's so hard to repeat,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So, anyhow, you just entered the mind of simple coach, which is troubling. So, hey, Kat, this is where what's the pressure on you? It's a terrible question, but right, like this is your
Hmm.
first full year
Hmm.
at Case. Big demands at Case. Let's be real, right? Like high
Hmm.
expectations for how Case is going to perform. What's the what sort of pressure do you feel as the head coach after with your first full year under your belt?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the way we finish in conference is not where we wanted to be, and that's not where we want to be year in and year out. So obviously, like, I mean, I personally think a lot of the pressure that I feel is probably pressure I put on myself. um I definitely feel a lot of pressure because, to be honest, like, we have we really do have such a great group of young women. I mean, my assistant and I talk about it all the time. Like, they make our job a lot easier. We have a lot of great leaders. Like, we have this senior class that obviously, came in as freshmen and made the national championship game. And
Mm-hmm.
I know they want to go back there. And I know all of our, obviously, like, incomers, returners want to do that too. But I know they've had a taste of it and know what that feels like. And I think, the way we finished the last 2 years, the year before I was here, obviously, and the year, this last year, I know that's left a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth and they're not satisfied. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I would obviously love to provide that to our team and give them that
Mm-hmm.
experience and that opportunity, because I do think they've earned it and deserve it. But there's a lot of teams out there that can probably say the same thing. But yeah, I mean, we got to do better than what we did last year. That's the pressure. The pressure right now is that we are still figuring out what pieces of the puzzle go where, and we are still in the early stages of doing that. Like, last year, obviously, we were doing it on a whim, but now we're making some more changes. Like, this spring, we
Mm-hmm.
started to implement some different changes a little bit, and maybe like our style of play or things like that a little bit, because we had the time to do it. But honestly, again, we had a ton of injuries this spring. Like, there were times that we had 28 on the roster and we had only 14 that could practice. And so we're going over these changes, but we don't have the full unit there. So that makes it hard. And then you're adding another seven. And so, but that's the reality of it, right? Like, any team, a lot of teams go through that, have different changes. And that's just what we know that we're going to have to put, um, just get after it day one, see how things click. And we just have to, I think, trust the process a little bit, but also understand that, like, we're going to have to make those changes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean, there's definitely pressure. We got to do better than what we did last year. Last year, in all of our minds, is not acceptable. So, but when you're in a tough conference and you do have a really tough schedule ahead, it does make it a little nerve wracking because the NPI and all that stuff is still new. So we're still figuring out how, playing in Calvin, playing Christopher Newport, playing, honestly, like Barron, all those teams that did so well last year and made the tournament are going to affect our schedule now that we have kind of a harder one. So,
Mm-hmm. I'm interested in that too. The whole how does you, you know do do losses to really good teams matter? Like all those
mhm.
questions that I think are very open and I think could dramatically change how people schedule, right? Like or
Yep.
force them to change. Um, I'm always amazed, and I totally understand why. And like in your case, why you have the schedule you have. Like it is not for the faint-hearted. But there's a good reason for that, right? Like you're not Case is not didn't make the national championship by playing
Mhm.
an easy schedule. Like that's not how it works. Unfortunately, in this sport, in most sports, like you actually have to test. You actually have to test yourself against the
Mhm.
best to get anywhere. Can I ask you the is to that like I mean, would you like your schedule to be more difficult? Like and I'm not saying so much the conference because conference you
Mhm.
really can't do much, but the UAA is ridiculous. The non-conference, would you like? I mean, would you like to play Christopher Newport every? Just using them as an example,
Yeah.
every game be a Christopher Newport or a like Christopher Newport?
I wouldn't say every game. I definitely think having varying levels because I think the best teams got to show up no matter who you're playing and no matter what the level is. And I think we didn't do a great job of that last year. So I think having those various levels, in a sense, are good for a couple different reasons. I think that's one of them. I think being able to tweak things and see how that works in different games is also important, and also like providing others opportunities to see the field that maybe like we've seen them in practice, but obviously being in a game is different. Like we've all seen those players that maybe aren't practice players in a sense, but they always show up every game day. And we've also had the
Mm-hmm.
opposite where somebody is killing it in practice and then you put them in games and it doesn't seem to click right now, whether it's like
Mm-hmm.
anxiety that they face before heading in or
Yeah.
things like that. And so I definitely think having the ability to have different levels and kind of see how we handle that, how we mentally approach those things, how we handle the adversity or whatever it is good for us and ways that we can problem solve. Because I think last year we went into a couple games thinking, oh, like we're the UAA and we're this and we're that, and like we didn't show up the way we should have, and
Yeah.
I think that kind of bit us in the butt a little bit, and so I do think from the standpoint of like that's part of the reason why I wanted a hard non-conference schedule. Now, part of the other reason is that's what we were dealt with, and we couldn't find other games. Like we had people saying we're full or whatever, which
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So it was difficult. I think the NPI changes who people want to play. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't want every game to be that way. I definitely think having some games that are different levels are beneficial, but I definitely think having one or two non-conference, and we probably have a little bit more than that right now, with how teams finished last year, is going to be it's going to let us know. And I think we went in
Yeah.
UAA last year a little bit scared as a group,
Really?
and we're
Oh,
trying to erase that.
that's interesting. That's interesting. Why would do you think it? I mean, I hate to say it, like a consistency is. Do you think one of the underlying issue? It's like you said, you didn't show up for some games,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You didn't have the right mentality for
Mm-hmm.
some games. Do you think that's a consistency issue or a yeah?
Like consistent that they have every year, or
Yeah, no, consistent game in and game out. This we are going to deliver our
yeah,
game in
yep,
this way at this level every time, regardless of the opponent.
yeah. I mean, I definitely think we had that issue last year with being consistent in how we were approaching a games mentally.
Mm,
I think there was just an expectation that we were going to go in and win games, and we didn't maybe have to show up in the same way. At least maybe that's how it presented itself. Maybe that's not. I'm assuming it wasn't the intent, obviously, but I think at
yeah,
times it presented itself that way. And yeah, I think we need to do a better job of that, of being like, we need to take care of business. I don't care who we're playing, but we have to go in with the expectation that we're going to control the game, we're going to control the pace of play, and stuff like that. Like in every single game, like one of the things that we talked about, and I think we did a really great job at the back half of our season, especially in the NCAA tournament, with being pretty good with that and handling our emotions well and knowing that we had adversity. I know I spoke about like last year, we're playing really well in game number two, and then we kind of face a little bit of adversity, and our team panics, and we're like, oh my gosh, like we're not having success. We're used to the year prior being the team with the best defense in the country, and now we're getting
yeah,
scored on, and it's kind of freaking us out a little bit. And it's like, well, every you know game in or year in and year out, every team is different. So whether that was the identity and maybe that's still something we try to value, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how we're going to get the job done every single year. So I
Mm,
think we just had to make some shifts there, and I think we definitely saw that growth throughout the season. But yeah, I think we got to change our mentality going into every single game and not look like, oh, well, like this isn't our conference play or this isn't a top 25 team or whatever, and just handle it and be like, this is the team we're playing today. This is how we got to approach it and what we got to do to get the job done. And then once we're done with that, we can now move on to the next game.
yeah.
Honestly, one of the things my high school team actually said our freshman year, we kind of had this like, we had shirts that said 1-0 on the back, and everybody used to
Yeah.
say, what does that mean, 1-0? Like, the record 1-0, like
Yeah.
0. So, and we used to be like, the idea is that we take it game by game and we do what we need to do for this next game and we
Yeah.
focus on that. And then when that game's done, we focus on being 1-0 the next game. So
Yeah.
I think we need to do a better job of that a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting how the mind works of an athlete, right? Like how quickly they've moved beyond where they're supposed to be at right at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're gonna win this one easy, and then next week we play, and that's what we're
Yep.
gonna have to do. And you're totally forgetting that you still haven't won the game.
Yep.
You gotta finish it off. Um, I love that sort of stuff. Like it just really gets me getting into the mind of a soccer player and sort of simple game, but how complicated we can make it. And by nature, like I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what comes with the territory. It's not robotic. Yeah, it's not a question. It's not robotics. So, anyhow, Coach,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for this. Do appreciate
Yep.
it. I will be watching um, with intention now because I got to see everything you said. I got to see it in practice. I'm going to hold you
Hopefully,
to it
hopefully you do see it. You
now.
can tell. If
Yeah,
not, let me
yeah.
know because then I gotta
Wh-
hit the drawing board again. So,
remember, I asked you the question about pressure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's coming from me.
Trust me, the
I
pressure I give myself is probably worse than
oh,
anybody
I'm
else.
sure.
So,
I am sure. I'm sure. Mine is nothing in
yeah,
comparison.
but
Um, I do wish you the best.
thank you.
I wish
Yeah,
your ladies the best, and yeah, I'll be watching. So thank you
thank
very
you.
much for today.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Yep.
Take care.